Welcome to Crypto Sapiens, a show that hosts lively discussions with innovative Web3 builders to help you learn about decentralized money systems, including Ethereum, Bitcoin, and DeFi. The podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and it is not financial advice. Crypto Sapiens is presented in partnership with Bankless DAO, a movement for pioneers seeking freedom from the limitations of the traditional financial system. Bankless DAO will help the world go bankless by creating user-friendly on-ramps for people to discover decentralized financial technologies through education, media, and culture. Hello, and welcome back to Crypto Sapiens. And today we are talking with Crypto Bushi, founder of DAOpunks, and now also Memelord at Bankless HQ. We start our discussion with Crypto Bushi describing how he became green-pilled and joined Bankless DAO after receiving an airdrop as an early supporter of Bankless HQ. He also recalls the role Bankless DAO community members had in inspiring DAOpunks. We talk about the manifesto, which seeks to inspire a movement of CorpRats to become DAOpunks. And to this effect, DAOpunks has created a grants program intended to provide individuals with the initial resources needed to take the leap and go full-time DAO. In our conversation, we also touch on activating new joiners to a DAO, empowering new ideas, and making space for emergent leadership. So without further ado, let's get started.
Hey, Humpty. Pleasure to be here. Thanks. I am Livefast, and I have a very different origin story than CB over here. I've been in the crypto space for it's got to be 6 years, and if you even count the time before that where I first heard about cryptocurrency, we're talking origins, so 2012, around there. But I found myself in DAOpunks just, randomly. Shout out my friend B17Z, who's basically just a friend of mine who I shoot the shit with about cryptocurrencies and just general things in the space. And I had talked to him one time about just NFTs were blowing up, and I didn't really know anything. I barely know anything. I'm always a year or two behind. And I asked him one day, I was just like, yo, I want to own an NFT. I was like, you own a few things. You know this more than I do. Recommend me something. Tell me something to look at. And he's like, yo, check out DAOpunks. I think he's like, they got a good community. They got a good ethos. They have a good mantra of what they want, we're trying to achieve. The art's pretty solid. And I was like, yeah. And then and I remember the last thing he said is, oh, by the way, if you get their NFT, you can claim a free shirt. And I was like, sold. So I went on OpenSea and I was like, all right, what's the floor price? Okay, cool. It's 0.35 ETH. Yeah, I'll pick up this. And so I picked up an NFT I liked, just some random one. I was like, yeah, I like this. And I bought it, claimed my shirt, and I was like, yeah, we'll see how this goes. And then I kind of put it away for about 2 months. And I didn't really think much past that. And then, a couple months go by, and I just kind of was just starting to think about it. And I was like, I got this NFT. There's this community going on, and I kind of want to know what's happening. Maybe I can get involved. Maybe I can do something. I don't know what I can do. I don't know much. I know what I know, and I don't know a lot of things about here. But let me just sit in. So 2 months after I bought my NFT of a DAOpunk, my Anon, I attended my first community call. Sat in the community call. There was probably 5 of us at the community call, and I don't know what I'm doing. So I just sat in the community call, and I was just quiet. I just listened. I just remember Hero and CB were in the community call, and they've been talking for an hour about it, and I'm just listening, and I was like, oh, this is pretty intense. They're thinking about complex stuff, and I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't have an opinion on it. And then they just straight up called me out in the middle of the call, and they're like, yo, live fast. You haven't said a single thing. What are your thoughts on this? And I was like, oh, deer in headlights. I was like, I think you should do what about this? Or here's my thought, but I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't know what to think. And they just kept involving me. They wanted my opinion on this. I was in the community call, and they're like, okay, well, we have community calls every week, it'd be, attend. And ever since then, I've just been attending community calls and just doing things, just being more vocal in the Discord and trying to give my 2 cents, answer questions, just read and make sure things are going on. And, before I knew it, I just found myself to be around so much. CB and the rest of the team gave me let me become a community manager. And the next thing I know, I'm pitching like high-powered ideas, the digital licensing agreement, the like how we should handle governance, how we should do grants. I just, it was just like it's almost like an imposter syndrome. I don't really know much of anything, but the next thing I know, I'm like, hey, I have this idea. Here's it fleshed out. Like, what do you guys think? What are your thoughts about this? And so that's how I came to be.
That's amazing. And again, I think a few things there to unpack too. So let's go back a little bit and then hopefully we can come back and touch on these things as well, because I think it's important to talk about this idea of how we build these inclusive communities, right? Especially when there may be a few individuals who choose to be a little more silent because maybe that's their nature. Maybe they feel like they themselves are imposters in this space because it's so fast moving, because maybe they just got started, but they themselves are the ones that have these really big ideas that help these projects move forward and mature. So yeah, 100% want to touch on this, but I do want to go back to that point that we were making earlier in terms of Crypto Bushi, what you were doing in terms of the work previous to Web3. Was it art related? How did your art come to be influenced, and how did that art eventually become what we know now as DAO Punks?
Yeah, so that's interesting. So no, I was absolutely not doing anything with art. I was kind of doing the furthest thing from it. I was a business broker. And so some people will call it like mergers and acquisitions. And so essentially what I was doing is I was working with like small business owners, and I was helping small business owners and small business buyers basically purchase or buy and sell small businesses. And so these would be businesses like local restaurants, local bars, local like boutique stores, stuff like that. And so I was working with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I was really in my full capacity. I was basically like a salesman, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, one thing that was really interesting that I think there's a lot of parallels with kind of what I was doing before and what I'm doing now is that I was essentially helping people kind of break free out of the system. Like a lot of the businesses that I was selling, essentially what I was doing was I was helping entrepreneurs exit their business so that they could retire, or maybe they had like a big life change going on. Like maybe they were sick, or maybe they were moving because of grandchildren or whatever, and they need to sell their business. And I was helping, younger entrepreneurs who were hungry and ready to kind of take a new chapter in their life, step into a new business and into a whole new chapter and pursue new things. And so like some of my clients were people that would leave like the corporate world and step into like entrepreneurship. A lot of people think that when you're an entrepreneur, you have to like start a business. Well, you don't always have to start a business. There's a lot of businesses out there that you can purchase as well. And so that was basically what I was doing. But really, I would say I was always kind of like an artist at heart, though. Like, I think one thing that gave me like a really big competitive edge was that growing up, I was always like learning new kind of digital marketing techniques. Like I was learning Photoshop at a young age just for fun. I was like learning, video production software like Adobe After Effects and Premiere. I was learning like web design. I was learning graphic design. I was always kind of learning these skills, except I was just applying them differently. Like I was basically applying them to marketing so that I could, get new clients and do more deals. And so when I shifted completely and I left that behind, I basically just took all those skills that I was using and just reapplied them into something different. And so instead of like making marketing graphics and stuff like that, I was making other stuff that I thought was cool. But everything comes full circle in life. It's kind of interesting. Like there's a lot of times in my life where I was like spending a lot of time learning something, and I never could really figure out like how I could apply it. But then as the years go on, you're like, oh yeah, like, I got super obsessed with photography for like 3 years, and I bought all these nice cameras and all these things. And I never became a photographer, but all that time learning photography taught me like composition of photos, taught me color theory, taught me, how to properly edit photos, things like that I now apply to like my art that I use today. And so I would stress to people that are listening to this, like, you don't always have to have like a reason why you're like learning something. Like if you're interested in it, then that's the sign enough. Like just keep doing it. Not everything has to be like fleshed out completely to where you're like, oh, how am I going to like monetize this? Or, oh, I can't learn photography because I'm not going to be like ever a professional photographer. It's like, well, you don't know what you're going to use those skills for in the future. Like you might not be a professional photographer, but you might use those skills for something else. Stuff like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that is a gift of getting older, is that as you get older, that this wisdom hopefully comes into play. And what you learn, I think, is the interconnectedness of everything, both relationships, work, skills, values. And so, yeah, 100% agree with you. I think that many times we may see that we're doing something because it is fun, it's interesting, it's hopefully maybe helping us build out our career. But at the end of the day, when we, kind of jump into new life experiences, some of these things have relationships to one another. And because we took the time to build out those, values or skills, we are better for it in this brand new experience. And so I think the same thing can be said for artists and, business people and entrepreneurs who are coming into the Web3 space, that anything that they have learned and utilized in maybe previous work experience can certainly be bridged into the Web3 ecosystem. In fact, personally, I think that I would like to see a lot more like sociologists and psychologists and, these humanities individuals come into the space, because I think that those would be incredibly valuable at enriching this ecosystem. And, because this is primarily driven by people and for people. And so these, I think, professionals with these ideas and education, I think, could potentially help build out this space into something a lot more dynamic, richer, fair, and inclusive.
Absolutely. I just want to jump in real fast. I just thought of something too that I think is important to go off this as well. And this is another thing that being a business broker taught me as well. And this I think applies great with Web3. The number one mistake that I see a lot of people make, or at least a lot of my friends make right now, is that they identify themselves to what they do for a living. And I just think that's such a dangerous concept, because basically you're just putting yourself in this box to where then what you chose to do early on in life is essentially you. And then it becomes really hard to change yourself in the future. And so I think there's a lot of people out there in the world that they think that they only have one shot at becoming this, what they want to be. And they have a hard time shifting that narrative into something else. And what I want people to realize is that you literally are who you say you are. And so one day you might be a salesman, and the next day, if you want to be an artist, all you have to do is start saying to yourself that you're an artist and start being an artist. You don't have to always be this one thing. And essentially that's what I loved about business brokerage, is that I saw people transition completely. I mean, I saw people who practiced, corporate law for 30 years drop that completely, because they said, you know what, I hate this. I'm going to buy a landscaping company and be a landscaper. And that's such a weird concept to think about, because that's not really something that society, teaches you. But the same kind of applies over here in Web3. If you're not a coder right now, but you want to be a coder, well, guess what? You can be. All you have to do is start coding. And now you're a coder. Granted, you're probably not going to be a very good coder at first, but you're still a coder. And so it's the same thing with being an artist. If you're like an executive assistant in the Web2 world and you want to be whatever over here in Web3, I mean, the opportunity is actually here, and you can do that. It really just takes you starting to believe that you are what you want it to be. And I don't want it to sound cliche. I think it's true. And I think Web3 is opening up that space for everybody, because let's face it, everybody's anon in this space. Even people that dox themselves, you still really don't know anything about them. Basically, we all believe what people tell us. And there's this kind of level of separation from Web3 identity to your real identity. And so we're really all trusting each other here. And so when you go and meet somebody and they say that they're a developer, then you probably believe that they're a developer. And so I really urge people, take that opportunity. Like, if you don't like what you're doing now, just switch and start doing something else. Because like we are probably in one of the only times in history where that's actually possible. And I just find it kind of baffling that there's so many miserable people in this world, because it really is like, you don't have to be miserable. You can enjoy what you're doing and you can make a living doing it, but you have to just make that jump though.
Yeah, I think you're touching on something that also I personally believe in, and is one of the reasons why I'm an advocate for the Web3 space and a huge believer in DAOs, is I think that the future that they're facilitating is one that is, self-sovereign. And I don't just mean that in the, traditional ways, both in terms of ownership of identity and all of these other things that are attached to that identity. I also mean in terms of like choice and the work that you do and getting fulfillment and building something, getting ownership in something that you believe in, that aligns with, your personal values. Because I do think that there is an attachment of your identity to your work, but I don't think that that is necessarily right or true. There should be, your identity should be driven by values, these core beliefs, inalienable, right? And yeah, I think that that should be influencing what you choose to do for work. And there's a certain freedom to that in Web3 that I think can certainly create some new opportunities for people who may not have had that in the past. Also because it's global, it's asynchronous, we're able to work with people from around the world in ways that I don't think have had an opportunity to do so either. But you touched on some things just now that I think beautifully segue into the DAO Punk mantra, right? Which talks about CorpRats and becoming a DAO Punk. I think some of these values or some of these ideas and beliefs and how we connect to work are part of that CorpRat mindset. Can you walk me through a little bit about where that came from? That idea of like helping people go from being a CorpRat to a DAO Punk, and how does that exemplify itself in the project and just generally maybe in your life?
Yeah, it really started with just like a meme. I mean, me and Sinjin were the founding members of kind of the DAO Punk idea. And I don't want to say the idea. It really, the Bankless DAO community was the idea, and we just kind of we wanted to put a visual to it. So I won't say we were the founders of that idea, but we were basically just talking about launching like an art project. Like, we just wanted to launch an art project, and because NFTs were blowing up, and me and Sinjin are both kind of builder mentality, and we're like, okay, cool. Like, other people are building some cool stuff. Like, let's build something cool too. And we originally just started with just like wanting to make some cool art. And Sinjin comes from a fashion design background. He's worked for a bunch of really just impressive companies in the Web2 world. And so he had all the means to take like our artwork and turn it into physical. And again, I wasn't an artist before. It's still kind of weird for me to say I'm an artist now, but so I had never had an opportunity to like put my artwork on shirts out in the real world. So when Sinjin brought that to me, I was like, absolutely, like that would be so cool. Like having some people walk around the streets with like some of my artwork on it. Yeah, let's do it. And it started with just such a basic idea, and it just continued to evolve because we started with just a super simple idea. I think we only wanted to do like 100 shirts or something, and they were just going to be of like one piece of art. And then Sinjin's like, oh, well, can we do a generative project? And I was like, no, absolutely not. Like, I don't know how. And then eventually I figured it out. And then more people started joining the team in Bankless DAO, and we ended up having like 15 people at one point working on the project before it launched. And, out of each meeting, we just kept leaving the meeting with different thoughts and ideas. And Sinjin was like, this needs to be a movement. We need to turn this into a movement. And so that's when he came up with like the manifesto, which is really where this whole like DAO Punk ethos was born. And it all was basically reflective of what we saw happening in Bankless DAO. And so that's what I mean earlier by like, we're not like the founders or the creators of the idea of DAO Punks. We basically are just trying to like, I guess, record it in history visually of what we believe DAO Punks look like. And so we saw all these people working in the DAO in various DAOs, basically doing what they love to do, picking what they want to do, and making money doing it. And I think we both like to think that in the future the world will be more like that, to where you don't have to be miserable. Like you don't have to pick a job straight out of high school or college and then do it forever, because humans are interesting creatures. I mean, it's like, one day you like something, the next day you don't. So it's so idiotic to think that like you have to, straight out of high school, know what you want to study in college for 4 years. And then once you leave college, you do that for the rest of your life. It's just silly. But unfortunately, society is built like that. And so really we're just trying to imagine, like, how would we want to work, And I think Sinjin has always been a super big inspiration on all of this stuff, because he's such a free spirit. And I know you've talked to Sinjin a bunch, but he's just super inspirational. He likes to work on, really big idea projects. And I think he was the original one who kind of came up with this whole ethos.
Yeah, I've also peeked at a recent deck, and it looks like y'all are just continuing to build. Maybe I won't alpha leak it here, because I hear that y'all are going to have some sort of like surprise stuff happening. But it may have something to do with a bus, which I think is super dope. Kind of continuing on this mission, right? And expanding that to a much wider audience.
Yeah, the GM bus. It's going to be really cool. So I'll, I don't know exactly when they're going to launch it, but that's going to be a fun experience too. It's basically going to be a bus that travels around the country and potentially the world. And it's going to try to help educate people on crypto past what people believe. Like most normal people in the real world, when you talk about crypto, they just think about the investing aspect of crypto. They don't realize that like there's this whole kind of underlying community doing other things. And so we really need more people to go out into the world and say like, hey, okay, cool, you own Ethereum and Bitcoin, but let's go do some other stuff with it. Like you don't just have to hold it in like a custody wallet.
Right. No, I mean, that's exactly the space that we would like to believe that we fill too, is that education initiative, because there's more than just, like you said, talking about the financial elements of crypto, but there's a lot more. There's definitely these more meta discussions, these sociological movements, right? In terms of how it impacts people in the way that they work, how it impacts people in the way that they can govern themselves, gain ownership over things, build along these like shared values. So since we are, I guess, on that, I think I do want to circle back on something that you were just talking about, and that's the manifesto, right? And I think that it's important to kind of discuss the value of this generally in terms of like how you drive communities together or bring communities together through the values, right? Through the mission of an organization. And you were talking about how Sinjin was influential to this, but I think before then, I don't think that I had seen manifestos being used as this construct that was not just something that was like marketing speak, but certainly something that drove an idea even further and made it relatable and made it kind of like the driving force of that project. So I guess maybe if you wouldn't mind, and I know you touched on it a little bit already, but like, what have you seen in terms of like the impact of the manifesto, and how do you see maybe just these values and mission driving both DAOpunks into the future, but also maybe even some of these other projects that you're involved with?
Yeah, I think it's super important. What we saw during this big kind of mania phase with like NFTs in crypto, obviously as well. We saw all these projects launching and they were just coming out of the woodworks. I mean, at one point, it was almost like every single day, there was like 3 or 4 projects dropping. And it was just amazing to see how many things were launching at one point. And I remember like everybody got to the point where it's like, this is not sustainable. And, obviously we see that now. And so I think if you're going to launch a project, you really need to like take a step back and say to yourself, like, okay, why am I launching this project? What's the point? Why would anybody be interested in this project? What is this project going to solve, if anything? And really try to like put all that stuff down. And I guess originally like a lot of that was through like a roadmap and stuff like that. But Sinjin, I think Sinjin came up with the idea of the manifesto too. Like, hey, we should have like a manifesto. And really, what was nice about the manifesto is that it really made us take a step back before we launched and say, like, well, why are we doing this? What's the point? All these questions that we had to answer. And it helped a lot because, once you could effectively answer those questions, it gave you a lot more like peace of mind that you're like, okay, I'm moving in the right direction and that there's actually like a need here. And one thing that I noticed too is that like a lot of people, when we did launch the project, a lot of people really did resonate with the manifesto. Like one of the things that I saw that was shared the most on Twitter regarding our project was the manifesto. And so, not only was it like a really great thing that kind of it explained the whole project in kind of like one paragraph, it also really like was a great marketing tool, and it really like pulled people together towards like a cause, because it kind of hit on some like heartstrings where people are like, you know what? Yeah, like I really don't like what I'm doing now. And it kind of helped people realize that they can actually like maybe, there is like a light at the end of the tunnel sort of vibe. And so I think it's a super powerful thing. Another project that I know you had on not long ago that also had like a super hard hitting manifesto was Cult DAO. And I think, that was probably one of the main reasons why Cult DAO was or still is as popular as it is because the manifesto is just so well written and it hits on like so many heartstrings to where people are like, you know what, like I'm going to get into this project just because I believe in the manifesto. Like I don't even care about the other stuff. And so I think it's important.
Yeah, I mean, we have Livefast here on stage, so I'd be curious to hear from you how that manifesto impacted you. Because again, this was something you brought up early in your introduction, is in terms of like maybe your feeling of maybe having an imposter syndrome, but really being encouraged by the project and the people in the project to participate, to contribute, and to come up with these really interesting ideas that are helping to continue to move the project forward. So Livefast, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to hear from you in terms of how this manifesto, I guess, helped with your introduction to the project and then maybe even to your transition to becoming an active contributor in that project.
I'm going to out myself and I'm going to feel embarrassed because, like I said in the beginning, when I first got into the project, I went on my recommendation from my friend and I liked the art. The art was dope and I bought it. I didn't read the manifesto and probably until like maybe my third or fourth week after attending governance calls. I'm so sorry. But even then, the idea of what the manifesto is and what it means to me is like, it's so in line with my personal character. Even in my personal life, I work for the people. I work in intellectual property. I actually help inventors and like companies, like, with intellectual property questions and patent protections and stuff. So like I am for helping to improve other people's lives with their own ingenuity to really like, they have an idea to help whether or not they get protection from that idea to make sure that it is new and novel. So, even in a weird way, it is just like I was like built for this like manifesto to help liberate other people, to bring them into like remove like help get them out of their other job and really towards improving their lives through whatever idea that they had built upon. So it's in a weird twist of fate. It all seems to just work out. Even in my current like position where the stuff that I'm working on for DAO Punks, it is all based on not improving myself, but just improving our community members, and giving them options or like the ability to do things that they didn't know that they would want or they could have. That's, it's all about like, I'm trying to just help them be better or have the option to do things that they didn't think were possible or that they could do or stuff like that, and remove roadblocks that may or may not be presented for themselves.
I mean, it sounds like either directly or indirectly you're repeating some of that, the manifesto and some of those core ideas, right, of building something that is rewarding for people and to give them, this opportunity to do meaningful work, to build communities, to build bridges and blaze trails, as it says. So yeah, it's interesting, right? I mean, it sounds like maybe for you, the art, which also for me was hugely influential. I am a holder of a few DAO Punks. In fact, there's one for me, one for my wife, and we got our shirts and we do wear them proudly. And so, yeah, I think that there's something to be said in terms of like the artwork that looks really badass, but also in terms of like just it's so deeply ingrained in the project, in its art, right? That maybe it goes without saying. It really is just permeated the culture of the project. So I'd be curious, since we already have you unmuted here, Livefast, talk a bit about this recent initiative that was passed at DAOpunks and what that means for the future of the project and its community.
Yes, the DAOpunks digital license agreement terms and conditions passed yesterday overwhelmingly with a vote of 88 unique addresses. 179 DAOpunks NFTs were voted in favor, with 2 DAOpunks voted in dissent. We are offering now, owners of DAOpunks will have a royalty-free license for personal use, and will have an unlimited worldwide commercial license to use their DAOpunks for derivative arts and other projects that they see fit. This was a project of mine, or a topic of discussion for months. Long chats in the DAOpunks Discord over what can we actually do. It started off as just an innocent question to Crypto Bushi, to Sinjin, to the other high power people in the DAOpunks team. I'm by no means high powered. I'm just another DAOpunk holder in the team. Just ask them a simple question. Hey, what can I do with my DAOpunk? It seems to be unclear. We don't have anything in like down on paper, or there doesn't seem to be any thing written. And the response back was, yeah, we don't. And I was just like, I'm like looking at I look around at the other space, and I just kind of was like looking at other projects as everybody does. And I just kind of was like, a lot of people kind of like have like limits, and like they say what you can and can't do. And I just kind of like fell down this rabbit hole question of just like, well, what should we do with this? And I just started off, and it was just like looking at different ideas. What do other big name projects have? What do they say that they can do? And I kind of like, as I did research and I looked into it, like, there is a wide gamut of like differing opinions of what you can do with your NFT art, from very restrictive to only personal use, to no commercial use, to you have to get approval from the DAO for any type of commercial use, or to flat out non-commercial use, to the generic, like, you can do whatever you want. There are no restrictions. You don't even have to own the NFT to actually use the art. And I just I thought about it, and I asked questions, and I posed questions to the community, and a lot of it was just like, a lot of people were very like, this is very complex. You seem to be very interested in it. Just flesh out, like, just talk about it, like, see what people are saying. And there was a few bit community engagements in there, and I posed questions, and I just like kind of just asked everybody, like, asked people, I was like, what do you think? What do you want? Like, what do other people want to do with your DAOpunk? And a lot of people were just like, I don't know, man. I just want to use it. I just want to keep it. What, like, it doesn't really matter to me. And so I kind of like grabbed sentiment, and I came up with some ideas, and I was like, okay, so like here we boiled it down to like 3 options, whether or not it was like the CC0, protections of it. We went with the Yuga Lab space, Bored Ape Yacht Club. Like, we're just like, look, you can go, you own the NFT, you own it. Like, go ham. And then there are like the other models where it's just like you own it, but you can't use it for commercial purposes. And I just knew, like, in my core that like the DAOpunks, I was like, we want people to use it, and like we want people to use it, and we don't want to like restrict them. And if this is what it, like, if the DAOpunk is very representative of what you're supposed to be, and you resonate with both the archetype that we have, because we have, each DAOpunk has, like, you're one of a few archetypes that you could be, and people really pick their DAOpunks based on their archetype. like they resonate you have this custom, like you feel this connection with it, use it. I was like, use it. Go use it as your avatar, use it as your spokesperson for whatever you want. And I just pushed very hard for the license agreement as it's drafted right now. It's a fork of, the Bored Ape Yacht Club license agreement that they have. And I was like, you know what? This is us. This is what we want. We want, like, we are going to use this. This is right in line with everything that we would want to have. And I pushed hard, and a lot of people had questions and was concerns. And I was like, I think this is it. This is what we're gonna do. This is the best option for us. And I sat there and I wrote drafts, and I wrote multiple drafts. I wrote this multiple times. I sent it out to people, and I was like, people, like, read this. And, it was just like a few people were interested, few people were questions, but a lot of people were just like, overall, were just like, I'm not too sure. Like, maybe this is over my head. And I got dissuaded too. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the legalese of this. And when it came down to it, I was just like, I had a draft. I had, like, what I considered like the final version of it. And I had it in my hands for about a month. And, like, I was just like, I think I'm ready. And I think I'm ready to, like, post it. And I sent out a few messages, and, like, I didn't get a lot of reception back. And I was just like, I don't know what to do. Like, I have this draft. I'm like, I need to get, like, I was like, I would like to have, like, some lawyers look at it, like, want to get more feedback. And I was on a phone call with Crypto Bushi one day, and he just, like, flat out told me, bro, he's like, send it. Just, like, he's like, it's done. He's like, you go do it. He's like, this is what it's going to be. I was like, all right. Like, I called up. I have one friend, bless her heart, Patience, who literally took one look at it, gave me some comments, gave me some notes, gave me some additional things to think about. And I made my last few edits, and I was like, this is it. I was like, this is exactly what we need. And I put it up for Snapshot, and I was like, this is it for the DAOpunks. They'll tell me what we want to do. And by overwhelming the majority, I mean, we had people turn out for this vote that, like, I'm shocked. I'm so happy, and I'm so proud of it. And it turned out better than I could expected.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I think that just goes to reinforce this idea of, like, community ownership, permissionless contributorship, right? So it's good to see that this continues to be explored and, tinkered with and perfected and improved, I guess is a better word, within the DAOpunks ecosystem. So to start wrapping things up, I guess I have two questions here. And the first one would be like, so what does the future look like for DAOpunks now that we have this new licensing agreement? I did see something about, like, I think it was through your Twitter account, Crypto Bushi, that or maybe it was a DAOpunks Twitter account, that y'all are looking for new developers to kind of build out some new novel experience within the project.
Yeah. So our number one whole, like, roadmap or plan or whatever you want to call it, the whole, like, reason for DAOpunks was to be, like, a grants giving DAO. Like, we want to be, like, a public good. And so we have all this ETH in our treasury that we fundraised from the primary sale. Granted, it's worth a little bit less in USD value now, but we have all this money sitting in our treasury, and we want to give it away, and we want to grant money to people that have, like, similar ideals to us in terms of, like, working in DAOs, working in Web3, even projects. And so it took us about 6 months just to get, like, a working grant program going. And I think that's another thing to say here too. Like, running a project in Web3 and running it as a DAO is really hard. It's really, really hard. Just the nature of how DAOs are built. They're not always built for quick, decisive action. When you have everybody inputting ideas, it's very slow. There's a lot of conversations. It takes a long time to do stuff. And so we were all super excited when we did our first grant round, but now that grant round's over and we need to continue to do grant rounds. And so really our number one priority is to keep doing grants, at least until we run out of money. The other facet of DAOpunks that was always kind of interesting is that we also had this kind of play on fashion. And so I think, again, it's kind of cliche when people say, like, oh, you get a free shirt. It wasn't just a free shirt. We were basically taking this new idea of one-of-one NFTs on the blockchain, and we wanted to figure out, okay, can we take these one-of-one NFTs and then make one-of-one shirts in the real world, which hadn't been done before. but all of the technology to do it was there and it was present. And so we really wanted to kind of be like the first to do that. And so the shirts that everybody got, they weren't just like, one-off shirts to where everybody got the same shirt. They were one shirt that had your specific DAO punk on it. And it's the only one shirt with that specific DAO punk that will ever exist. And so that was like a super interesting feat that we accomplished as well to even figure that out logistically. And so that was kind of another interesting facet to the project. And so we have some ideas on some more interesting kind of fashion related plays that we're exploring that we need some developers for. It would make us again like another first in the fashion world for doing something like this. And I like to say like we're basically trying to merge the physical with the digital. And in the fashion world, that's still very new and young. And so that's kind of a fun thing that we're interested in as well. But again, the first number one thing that we're most interested in doing is giving away grants and making sure that we can help as many people as possible. And I think what's super interesting to note too is like we had like 50 people apply for the first grant. And a lot of those people were from all around the world. That money really could go a long way in some places. I mean, like $2,000 in the United States might not go that far, but like $2,000 in like places like Africa and places like that, it goes a really long way. And so we just want to keep continuing to try to help people. And that's our number one priority.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan and proponent of public goods as well, and happy to see the alignment with that as well over at DAOpunks. So one last question that we normally like to ask here to our guests, and I will share that question with you too, is, it doesn't just have to be on crypto Twitter, but who has been or what has been most influential to you through your crypto journey? It could be someone that early on kind of facilitated that, kind of idea and help guide you. It could have been a newsletter, a podcast, a blog. So yeah, who or what would you say has been most influential to you in your crypto journey?
Yeah, this is a super easy one for me. So I would say it would be Ryan Sean Adams and David Hoffman from Bankless HQ. And it was funny because when I first kind of started getting some interest in crypto, I'm really one of those people that like, I have a very addictive personality. And so when I jump into something, I way overcomplicate it. Like I obsess about it. I usually do way more research than I need to. And so when I first started getting into crypto, I was like, okay, well, I need to learn like as much as possible so that I can get like an edge, right? And so I started listening to all the podcasts. And one that I really enjoyed was Bankless, the Bankless podcast, which is super popular. And they always just had some great guests on, and they're just some cool guys. And I remember there was one specific episode where they started talking about working in Web3 and stuff like that. And I'll never forget, David Hoffman said, Web3 is looking for more people to work in the industry. Like, if you want to work in crypto, you can work in crypto. All you have to do is just start doing it. And I remember thinking, I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. Like, I was just so like, yeah, okay, like that's so much easier said than done. But long story short, like now I literally work for Bankless. Like I work for those same guys that like I was super excited and like inspired by. And so I think it easily hands down goes to those guys.
And that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Crypto Bushi and Livefast. It's great to see the organic growth of communities and the value they unlock by empowering their members. I hope to see the flipping of more CorpRats into DAOpunks in the future. If you'd like to connect with Crypto Bushi, you can find him on Twitter at @TheCryptoBushi. And to learn more about DAOpunks, you can go to DAOpunks.io and on Twitter at DAOpunksNFT. Thanks for listening to Crypto Sapiens. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a 5-star review wherever you enjoy your podcasts. It costs $0, means the world to us, and helps others discover this content too. You can also find more conversations like this one by visiting our website at cryptosapiens.xyz. I look forward to reconnecting with you at our next discussion.